Welcome back to the channel. Greg Allen F1. Thank you for everyone who has subscribed, joined the channel, and hit that like button over the last week or two with me coming back and getting some more F1 videos out there. First power rankings of the season. Round 1 is complete as we head into our F1 weekend. Out in the Middle East one more time this weekend. FP1 just several hours away at the time I'm recording this one. So the way my power rankings work, if this is the first time you've ever come across this, I will rank the top 10 drivers in my opinion in the power rankings. I have my reasoning behind it. And I will assign points and keep track of that. I tried to do that last year, fell off with this channel a little bit. I will make it through this year, I promise. So I will assign points. I think I'm going to do just a top 5, so making it to this side of my board will actually mean something. So we'll get 5 points, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and I will keep track of that and post it every round after this. So let's get right into these power rankings. I always like to start with my cut line. So starting off, just missing out, right below the cut line is Fernando Alonso for me. I thought Alpine had a really good first week. Both their drivers finishing in the points. Both of them looked much improved from last year. I think there's a lot of positive things coming out of that team moving forward. I look forward to see what they can bring the rest of the way. But I do think that Esteban Ocon had a little bit better of a week than Fernando did. So for that reason, just underneath my cut line. And Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda, the only Red Bull power unit to actually finish the race in week 1. So I do want to give him some credit on that. Gets himself a solid points finish. And we didn't see Yuki finish ahead of Pierre Gasly all that much last year. So a good start for his season. Coming in at number 10, though, is the man I just mentioned. And that is Esteban Ocon. So Ocon finishes P7 in week 1. I thought that he had a really good run. I'm really high on Esteban Ocon if you watch this channel. I've done career videos on him. I was a big proponent of him getting a ride back in F1 when he was out. And for me, I think that we're just seeing that natural progression. I think that he can be a solid 5th, 6th, 7th place driver all year long in the right equipment and maybe challenge for a win here or two like he did last season. So Esteban Ocon, P7 is a great way to start his season, and 10th place on my power rankings. Coming in at 9th place, probably a more controversial one, is Max Verstappen. And spelling and talking at the same time apparently is difficult for me, as that's the first time I'm doing this live and not editing it out. So Max Verstappen gets a retirement on there. He's not going to fall out of my top 10 of the power rankings. And this power rankings in week 1 is going to be probably all over the place. It's probably going to take 2 or 3 power rankings to where we see a trend of where these drivers are sitting. But the bottom line is Max Verstappen was very fast all weekend long. Red Bull looked like they were close to Ferrari with potential of possibly winning, maybe even last week in round 1. However, they gloated a lot about Mercedes and Mercedes not being up to pace, and then neither of them finished the race. So Max had multiple chances to take the lead against Leclerc. Looked really good. Looked like a classic Max, being right there P1, P2. And then nothing he can do about it. His power unit goes, or whatever actually happened with that car. And he doesn't finish the race, so he does drop down to 9th on that. That's more of about what happened at Red Bull than it is Max. He'll be flying up this board, I'm sure, as the year goes on. Coming in 8th place, Zhou Guanyu. So that is the proper way to say his name according to the broadcasts. And what a great debut for him. The Chinese driver finishes P10 on Sunday. And I mean, Alfa Romeo in general look really good. Really exciting to see. And I think he's going to bring a lot of excitement to the sport in China. Such a big country and a great untapped market. And I mean, he impressed me in his first Grand Prix. I want to see how he goes as we get more and more races under our belt. I did watch him in the feeder series. I'm not totally unfamiliar with his abilities, but much like Yuki Tsunoda last year, starts off with a really good debut in F1. So coming in P7 is going to be the other Red Bull driver, and that is Sergio Perez. And why is Perez ahead of Verstappen? Simply put, Checo, to me, showed improvement this year in getting closer to Max through round 1. He was not that far off of Max's times. He had his Red Bull right up there with Max in qualifying where it needs to be, in that top 4 all day long until they had their issues at the end of that race. And that is a great sign for Red Bull moving forward. An even better sign for Checo Perez, as Sergio last year at times struggled to get his handle on that car and wasn't really up there enough to be giving that support to Red Bull. And from what I saw in week 1, if they can get that car to finish the full race, Checo's not only going to be up there and be able to help Max in those strategy calls, but I think there's going to be some weeks where he's the top dog at Red Bull and winning some races. So good for him. Both those drivers are going to be on that side of the board, I think, a lot this year. So coming in sixth place, another one that's maybe a little controversial, and that is Carlos Sainz. So for me, Ferrari, team of the week last week, of course. They look like the world leaders this year. They are back in a big way. Both drivers looking fantastic. But Carlos finds himself on this side of the board, simply put, because, to his own admission, he's struggling to get a handle on that car, and he's pretty far off of Leclerc in Ferrari, at times as much as a second or more. So for me, I want to see that improvement. Winds up P2 in the race, does a great job. The man can race on Sundays. Being a former McLaren driver, you know I love him. I've always been a huge fan of Carlos Sainz, but like I said, to his own admission, he is off the pace compared to his Ferrari teammate. Don't think that's going to be a big deal with how fast those cars are, and I know that he'll figure it out probably within a couple of races. But for now, just missing out on the top 5. But not missing out on the top 5 is a man who's waited a long time to get there on my power rankings, and that's George Russell. So George Russell makes his Mercedes official debut now, not a Super Sub debut, and he comes home P4. Is that a little lucky based on what happened with the Red Bulls? Absolutely. Does that matter to George Russell? Probably not. They're definitely concerned with the pace of the Mercedes. There's going to be improvements coming throughout the year, but what a great way to start his official run as a Mercedes driver, and he finishes P4, just off the podium. Pit stop or maybe a couple strategy calls differently. He finishes ahead of Lewis there. Really good start to his Mercedes debut. Hopefully, George isn't joining a team that's now on the downward trend, but it does look like Mercedes has its work to do. I thought he raced a really good race and did everything he could do to get as much out of that car as he could in his first race with the team as an official driver. So, nicely done for George Russell. Coming in fourth, the man who George Russell replaced, Valtteri Bottas, or however you want to pronounce it. I always love the comments I get on that one. Alfa Romeo has a fantastic first Grand Prix last week. The Ferrari power units in general, across the board, looking really good. His teammate finishes the points. He gets a massive P6, which is just so much further up the field than I think any of us thought he was going to be when he wound up at Alfa Romeo. He looks like a new man, super happy with where he is, gets a great performance, terrible start to the race, and still recovers for a solid P6. Probably would have been a P8 if Red Bull doesn't have their issues. Doesn't really matter. I think he would have taken that. So really good job for Valtteri. It's great to see him on this side of the board. And I do think that we're going to see Alfa Romeos in the points pretty frequently this year, which is great news for all of us. And definitely great news for Valtteri Bottas, who a lot of people probably wrote off coming into this season when he was no longer going to be with that Mercedes. Coming in at number 3, of course, the man who lived at the top of my board, and that's Lewis Hamilton. So he finishes P3 in the race, gets himself on the podium, and he finishes P3 on my board for 1 week. I do think that both of the Mercedes drivers are going to have a hard time staying on this side of the board, at least in this first stint of the season. But full credit to Lewis. He absolutely figures out a way to put that Mercedes in the spot it needs to be in to capitalize on mistakes. And Red Bull gave them a lot of cheeky remarks all weekend long last weekend about being off the pace. But at the end of the day, they finished P3 and P4 and have a monster day in the points and are way ahead of Red Bull right now. Red Bull couldn't finish the race. So Lewis Hamilton, of course, he was going to be the one of those two drivers that gets himself onto that podium. And he looks he looks pretty good and hungry. And if Mercedes can start figuring out some of those equipment upgrades they're going to need to get up to speed, wouldn't surprise me if he's on the podium quite a few more times this season. Don't know if they're going to be able to get a win with the way that car looks, but you never know. It's a long season. And apparently they're going to keep getting longer every season from now on, from what we're hearing in the news. So we'll see. Number 2, and this one brings a big smile on my face to put on there. And I'm just going to let this one ring out. And that, of course, is Kevin Magnussen, the man returning to F1 in a Haas, replacing a driver that has been controversial for over a year, and certainly in preseason. Gets limited testing in there and just comes out and has a monster weekend, a fantastic qualifying for him, and matches it with an even better race, puts himself in position. Again, finishes P5 probably because of the issues with Red Bull. Who cares? If he finished P7, it would have been a fantastic result that he would take any day of the week. Gets massive points for that team, all smiles across the board, and who couldn't be happier for him? And power rankings are about who's trending upward and who is having just such an upward momentum compared to where they were. It's first race of the season, so clean slate for everyone. But I don't think there's a happier person in Formula One right now than Kevin Magnussen, except maybe the person who is P1, who, if you haven't figured that out by now, is, of course, Charles Leclerc. So, Charles Leclerc is my P1 in power rankings, and much like Hamilton and Verstappen lived in these two spots for pretty much the last 2 years of my power rankings, I expect that Leclerc is going to be there most of the season. He does it right. Ferrari is not only back with their power units, they're not only back looking like they're going to be battling for a Constructor Championship and Driver Championship, puts the car on pole, fast all through testing, fast through every practice, fast in qualifying, and just as fast as it needs to be in the race. And on top of that, puts on a brilliant, just an absolutely brilliant performance, fending off Max Verstappen and what was probably 3 laps of my favorite racing of the last 5 years in Formula One. In that first one. If that's what we're signing up for the rest of this year, I cannot wait to watch the next 20 plus Grand Prix that we get. Leclerc impressed me. Ferrari on top. He's on top. How long can he stay there? We will find out as the season goes on. Let me know what you think about these power rankings moving forward. So that's 5 points to Leclerc, 4 to Magnussen, 3 to Hamilton, 2 to Bottas, and 1 to Russell. I will keep track of these as we move on. Thank you for watching this video. If you like my content, give me a like, a subscribe, leave your comments, let me know what I got wrong, what you like about it, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be the race review on Sunday. Thanks for watching.